On our wedding night, I discovered a shocking truth about my husband. He needed his mother's presence during our first night together. My name is Becky, and I'm 26 years old. Our wedding day was quite simply everything I had ever dreamed it would be. As Chad and I stood hand in hand under the archway of blooming roses, our vows echoed softly under the vast blue sky. Our friends and family gathered in a beautifully decorated garden, washed with teary eyes and broad smiles as we promised to love and cherish each other. The air was filled with the scent of summer flowers, the sounds of laughter, and the gentle strains of violins that seemed to weave magic into the atmosphere. It was a day marked by joy, a celebration of love in its purest form, encapsulating the promise of a new beginning. As Chad and I planned our wedding, the usual joys and stresses of preparing for such a grand day were accompanied by the subtle shadows of Chad's past. Hints of his old, hidden scars began to emerge amidst conversations about table settings and guest lists. There were fleeting moments when his eyes would cloud over or he'd fall silent, seemingly gripped by a memory only he could see. I noticed these instances, the small cracks in his otherwise sturdy facade. My heart ached to know what weighed on him, but I respected his privacy fiercely. Chad was a man who valued his inner sanctum, and I loved him all the more for his complexities. So I did not press, choosing instead to focus on our love and the excitement of starting our new life together. In the whir of wedding preparations, my relationship with Mrs. Hayes, Chad's mother, took on a life of its own. From the outset, she was more than just a future mother-in-law. She was a presence of warmth and understanding, a comforting anchor in the sometimes overwhelming sea of wedding decisions. Her intuition about people was uncanny, and her ability to navigate Chad's moods proved invaluable, especially as the wedding drew closer and his episodes of withdrawal became more frequent. One chilly afternoon, as we pored over old family photo albums searching for inspiration for our wedding slideshow, Mrs. Hayes shared stories of Chad as a boy, his mischievous smile, his boundless energy, and also his quiet moments. She spoke with a nostalgic smile, but her eyes betrayed a hint of sadness, a mother's concern that had weathered many unseen storms. It was during these intimate gatherings that I began to understand the depth of their bond and how deeply the threads of past traumas were woven into the fabric of Chad's current being. Her role in our lives became even more pronounced as she helped me navigate through the complexities of bonding with a man whose heart had been scarred at such a young age. She had an exquisite tact in guiding me on how to be there for Chad, never overstepping, yet always providing just enough insight to help me connect with him on a deeper level. This delicate balance of distance and closeness in her advice helped me respect Chad's pace without feeling shut out. When it came time to choose gifts for Chad, be it his birthday or Christmas, Mrs. Hayes proved an indispensable ally. She had an exceptional knack for knowing exactly what would touch Chad's heart. Each gift we selected was not just a material item, but a symbol, a message in a bottle sent into the depths of his heart, affirming love, understanding, and acceptance. Shopping trips with Mrs. Hayes for these gifts became our little tradition, times filled with laughter and shared secrets, weaving me deeper into the family tapestry. The most memorable moment came a few weeks before the wedding. After a long day spent finalizing seating arrangements and menu choices, Mrs. Hayes invited me for tea at her house. The house was quiet, a soft classical melody playing in the background, lending an air of serenity to the room. We sat in her sun-drenched living room, surrounded by plants that thrived under her careful attention, mirroring the nurturing nature of her personality. With a gentle, almost reverential tone, Mrs. Hayes said she had something special for me. From an old, ornately carved wooden box, she pulled out a small velvet case. Inside was a ring, a beautiful antique piece that had belonged to Chad's great-grandmother. The ring was delicate, its band worn thin by time, its stone still catching the light with a fiery sparkle. As she placed it in my hand, her fingers lingered over mine, her touch conveying layers of meaning. "This ring," she began, her voice soft but clear, "is more than just a family heirloom. It is a symbol of our acceptance and trust in you, Becky. It's a welcome into our family, a family that, like this ring, has weathered many storms and survived. It is a testament not just to the past, but to the future we hope to build with you in it." The weight of the ring in my palm felt monumental, as if the small circle of metal encapsulated more than just familial history. It was a binding promise, a token of faith. The ring, with its intricate vyngs and warm golden hue, symbolized the merging of past and future, of memories and hopes. As I slipped it onto my finger, it felt like a shield, imbued with the strength and love of the women who had worn it before me. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked up at Mrs. Hayes, overwhelmed by the depth of her gesture. Her eyes met mine, mirroring my emotions. At that moment, I understood the sacredness of what she had given me. It was an affirmation of my place beside Chad, an endorsement of my role not just as his wife, but as a daughter to her. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. "I promise to honor the love and trust you've placed in me." She nodded, her smile tender. "I know you will, my dear. You already have." On the morning of our wedding, the early sun painted the sky with strokes of pink and orange, promising a day as radiant as the love Chad and I shared. The gentle breeze whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the soft, melodious chirps of morning birds. As I awoke, a flutter of excitement danced in my stomach, and a smile spread across my face, the kind that comes from deep within, knowing that today I would marry the man I loved. The venue was nestled on the edge of a lush, sprawling garden that bloomed with life, each petal and leaf vibrant under the warm glow of the sun. It was here, among the wee vying paths and fragrant blooms, that we had chosen to bind our lives together. The garden was more than just a venue. It was a reflection of our relationship, natural, blooming, and beautifully wild. As the morning progressed, the air filled with the sounds of preparation, the clink of dishes, the soft rustling of floral arrangements being perfected, and the gentle directives of the wedding planner created a symphony of anticipation. Each vendor moved with a purpose, their expertise turning our shown into reality. The tables were set with fine linen, each piece of cutlery placed with precision. Centerpieces of wildflowers and greenery adorned the tables, their colors popping against the crisp white tablecloths. The ceremony area was set in a quiet corner of the garden under a large oak tree whose branches stretched out as if to embrace the gathering beneath its sturdy boughs. A simple wooden arch stood decorated with white and soft pink roses, intertwined with ivy and sprigs of lavender. The chairs for our guests were arranged in a gentle arc, each one adorned with a small bouquet of flowers tied with a ribbon, fluttering lightly in the breeze. Guests began to arrive, their faces bright with joy and attire colorful, adding to the festive atmosphere. The hum of their greetings and laughter blended into the background music, a carefully chosen playlist of soft romantic tunes that Chad and I had spent nights curating. Each song held a memory, a piece of our journey, and now they played for all to hear, setting the stage for the promises we were about to make. As the time drew near, my heart began to beat a little faster, the reality of the moment settling in. Accompanied by my father, I took a deep breath and stepped into the hidden pathway that would lead me to the archway. The sight that greeted me took my breath away. There, waiting for me, was Chad. He stood tall and sure, his suit tailored perfectly to him, complementing his form. His hair was styled neatly, and his face held an expression of awe and tenderness as he watched me approach. The walk down the aisle felt like a lifetime and a moment all at once. With each step, I moved closer not just to Chad, but to the new life we would build together. The eyes of our loved ones followed me, but all I could see was him. As I reached his side, his hand reached out for mine, a silent promise of support and love that sent warmth spreading through me. The ceremony was a heartfelt exchange of vows that we had written ourselves. Chad's voice was steady but filled with emotion as he spoke his vows. His words painted a picture of our past and a promise of our future, each sentence carefully chosen to convey his love and commitment. My vows echoed his sentiment, spoken through tears of happiness that streamed freely down my cheeks. There was laughter, too, as we interjected little anecdotes of our life together, making the ceremony deeply personal and joyously authentic. As we exchanged rings, the symbol of our endless love and the seal of our vows, the oak tree above us seemed to stand a little taller, its leaves rustling as if in applause. The kiss that followed was both a seal of our promises and a celebration, met with cheers and clapping from our guests. The reception that followed was a blur of dancing, eating, and heartfelt speeches. The first dance was to a song that had seen us through our hardest times, its lyrics now a testament to the strength of our bond. As Chad spun me around the dance floor, the world fell away, leaving only the sound of the music and the feeling of being completely, utterly loved. Our families and friends made speeches that brought both roars of laughter and tender tears. Each word spoken was a thread added to the tapestry of our day, weaving a memory that would hold strong in the years to come. The food was exquisite, each bite a burst of flavor, a celebration of our day. The cake, a simple yet elegant design of white frosting and flowers, was cut amidst cheers, its sweetness a perfect metaphor for the life awaiting us. As the day transitioned into evening, the lights dimmed to a golden hue, casting shadows that danced along with the guests. Chad and I moved among our loved ones, our hearts brimming with happiness. Every moment felt suspended in time. From the heartfelt speeches that brought tears to our eyes to our first dance, where we swayed to a melody that spoke only to our souls, the world around us blurred into a background of sparkling lights and soft music, with the only focus being the profound connection between us. Yet as the night wore on and the last of the guests bid their farewells, a subtle shift occurred. The exhaustion from the day's emotions and festive ties began to settle in, and with it came a thickness in the air, as if it were laden with unspoken truths. I sensed it most acutely when we finally retreated to our room, the sanctuary where we had planned to end our perfect day. But instead of the comforting silence I had anticipated, there was a palpable tension, a stirring of something deep and unnerving that I couldn't quite identify. Chad, who had been the bastion of strength throughout our relationship, seemed suddenly distant, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a nervous energy that thrummed quietly beneath his skin. I had always known there were aspects of his past that shadowed his bright smile, hints of dark chapters he had never fully disclosed. Our relationship had been built on a foundation of deep mutual respect and understanding, and I had learned to navigate the delicate balance between his openness and the secrets he guarded so closely. I respected his privacy, never pushing for more than he was willing to share, understanding that some wounds were deeply ingrained, etched into one's soul by experiences too painful to relive. The unexpected knock at our door came just as I was about to speak, to breach the subject that hung between us. It was Mrs. Hayes, Chad's mother, her presence on the threshold of our bridal suite, as surprising as it was alarming. The sight of my husband whispering urgently with his mother in the dimly lit corridor was something I had not anticipated on our wedding night. The warmth and guidance Mrs. Hayes had always extended to me felt suddenly invasive, her timing inexplicable. "Mom, I can't. Can you come in?" Chad's voice, barely a whisper, carried a weight I had never heard before. His words, though softly spoken, seemed to fill the room, making the walls close in around us. My heart raced with a mixture of confusion and concern, questions forming faster than I could voice them. As they stepped into our room, the space that had once felt like a haven now seemed too small, the air too thick, as if filled with the dense fog of impending revelations. Mrs. Hayes' presence, although always a source of comfort in the past, now marked a moment of intrusion, an unexpected interruption in what should have been a private celebration of our union. Yet the look in her eyes, one of deep empathy mixed with a mother's protective instinct, prompted me to pause, to reassess the situation that was unfolding before me. It was clear that this was not just a breach of newlywed privacy. It was a necessary intervention, a moment that Chad needed more than I had realized. Mrs. Hayes' eyes flicked between Chad and me, her face etched with a mixture of apology and urgency. It was clear that this was not a mere intrusion, but a necessity born of something deeper, something distressing. Chad, usually so composed, looked visibly shaken, his eyes pleading for understanding. "What's happening?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The air felt thick with unspoken truths, the kind that could alter the course of a relationship forever. There was a palpable pause, heavy with hesitation. Mrs. Hayes glanced at Chad, who seemed momentarily lost for words, his gaze fixed on the floor. Then, gathering her resolve, she looked directly at me, her voice steady but soft. "Becky, there's something about Chad's past that you need to know, something he might have struggled to tell you himself." Her words were gentle, but they cut through the silence with the sharpness of glass. After a brief moment of silence, during which Mrs. Hayes seemed to calculate her answer. She turned to her son with wide eyes. "Wait, you told her about?" Chad shook his head. "Go ahead, what were you thinking?" "The poor thing must think we're a couple of weirdos." Chad looked deep into my eyes before he sighed and began to reveal his biggest secret. "When I was just 5 years old, the unthinkable happened. A burglar broke the peace of our home by breaking in through my bedroom window. That night, under the cover of darkness, my world changed forever. The intruder's silhouette, the menacing presence in my sanctuary, left me frozen in terror. I could not cry out or escape, and the result of the breach was a deep, all-pervading fear that clung to me long after the broken glass had been swept away and the window secured. In the following nights, my bedroom felt like a battlefield, every shadow a reminder of my vulnerability. Sleep, once a refuge, became an insurmountable challenge, but in the midst of my fear, my mother became my guardian angel. Night after night, she sat by my bedside, her presence a beacon of safety in the dark. With the gentle timbre of her voice, she spun stories of courage and adventure, of heroes who faced their fears and emerged victorious. These bedtime stories, more than just stories, became our ritual, a shared journey back to a sense of normalcy and safety. My mother's steadfast patience and love taught me that there is a source of strength, despite crippling fear, within us, a resilience that can be nurtured. Since that terrifying night, my mother has been my steadfast companion in my search for peace. As I fall asleep, her presence reminding me that even in our darkest moments, we are not alone. The revelation of Chad's childhood trauma had left the room steeped in a solemn air, charged with the rawness of newly shared pain. As Chad's secret unfolded, my initial reaction was one of shock, the kind that sends a chill through your very core, not just because of the horror of what he endured, but because of the profound depth of his hidden scars. My hands trembled slightly as the reality settled over me. This man I loved, so strong and composed, had carried this heavy shadow alone for so long. The weight of his past, a burden he had borne in solitude, now lay between us, but not as a barrier. Instead, it bridged our hearts with a newfound understanding. I felt a deep ache for him, the child who had faced such terror, and the man who had grown up shadowed by fear. But within that ache was a blooming determination, a resolve to be the support he needed, the partner he deserved. Chad looked into my eyes, vulnerability written across his face, and asked a simple question, a question that encompassed so much. "So, how can I help you?" His words, meant to be comforting, only underscored the role reversal we were experiencing. Here he was, still trying to be the protector, the provider, even in his moment of disclosure. "It's not about how you can help me, but how I can help you," I replied gently, taking his hand in mine. The contact was a small physical reassurance that I was there, fully present and ready to face this battle alongside him. Mrs. Hayes, who had been a silent pillar of strength up until now, spoke up, her voice calm and soothing, providing the guidance I needed. "Whenever Chad feels anxious or overwhelmed, especially at night, specific cuddling has always helped to calm him down," she explained. "Hold him close with his head resting on your heart. It's a method that has soothed him since childhood." I nodded, absorbing her advice with the seriousness it deserved. "Although he has largely outgrown the need for this, his anxiety can still overwhelm him in stressful times," she continued. "It is important to be patient and understanding and offer him physical reassurance. This approach has often been the key to helping him find peace and sleep." Armed with this new knowledge, I turned to Chad, inviting him into an embrace that I hoped would offer not just comfort, but also a sanctuary from his anxieties. He hesitated for a brief moment, then allowed himself to be held. As he laid his head upon my chest, I could feel his body tensed like a bowstring, the muscles tight with the effort of maintaining his composure. Gradually, as we remained locked in that embrace, I felt the tension begin to ebb from his body, his breathing slowing to match the steady beat of my heart. The room, filled with the echoes of our wedding celebrations just hours before, now resonated with a quieter, deeper connection. Every heartbeat seemed to whisper reassurance, a rhythmic reminder that he was safe, that he was not alone. In that moment, as I held Chad, the significance of what we were doing dawned on me. This was not just about providing comfort in a time of need. It was a profound act of sharing and healing. We were rewriting the narratives of his past fears with a new story, one of trust, support, and unconditional love. As Chad's breaths deepened and evened out, signaling his drift into sleep, the weight of his worries seemed to dissipate, lifting not only from his shoulders, but from the air around us. I felt a protective surge, a fierce desire to shield him from any further pain, and a commitment to be the partner he could lean on whenever the shadows of his past loomed too large. Mrs. Hayes, Ha-Vying observed the transformation from the sidelines, gave a silent nod of approval and gratitude before quietly Vying the room. Her departure was discreet, a respectful acknowledgement of the new intimacy Chad and I were forging. Her expression as she left was one of peace, a mother's relief palpable in her eyes, knowing her son was in caring hands. The impact of that night lingered long after Chad had fallen asleep and the first light of dawn crept into our room. Lying awake, I reflected on the journey ahead. It would require patience, empathy, and an openness to understand and soothe the scars of a trauma I had never experienced. But more than anything, I felt ready to be the partner Chad needed, to walk alongside him as we navigated the complexities of his healing together. The vulnerability he showed and my response to it did not weaken our bond. Instead, it fortified it. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were partners in a journey of healing and understanding. Each day, as we navigated his anxieties and fears together, our connection deepened, transforming from romantic love into something far more profound, a sanctuary, a safe haven where we could be our truest selves without fear of judgment. This tender, pivotal night marked not just the beginning of our marriage, but the deepening of our bond, a testament to the power of shared vulnerabilities and mutual support. It underscored a fundamental truth about love, that it is at its most potent not in the easy, joyful moments, but in the quiet, challenging ones, where we choose to stand together facing the hidden battles with resilience and hope. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of new beginnings, I knew that together we were stronger, and together we would heal. This experience taught us that love is not just about sharing joy and happiness, but also about bearing witness to each other's deepest fears and standing steadfast in the face of personal demons. It's about building a life where each person feels supported and understood, a foundation so strong that even the darkest past could not destabilize it. Our story, though rooted in pain and vulnerability, is ultimately one of triumph, of love's power to heal and transform. It serves as a testament to the fact that the most profound intimacy comes from baring one's soul and being met with compassion and unwavering support. As Chad and I continue to grow together, we cherish the lessons learned from that night, a night that began with uncertainty, but ended with the reassuring understanding that together we are invincible. This narrative of our first night as a married couple encapsulates the essence of our ongoing journey, a narrative of confronting shadows, fostering understanding, and celebrating the resilient, healing power of love.